Hello, good morning. Hello everybody, good morning. Thank you very much for joining. My name's Simon Floyd and I'm responsible for business development strategy in our worldwide industry group, focused on discrete manufacturing accounts, but I also have a unique role in the company that I get to facilitate a little fledgling program called Innovation Hub, and that's something that I'm here to talk to you about today. It's very nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you to those who came, especially the ones I didn't have to pay, who just came because I asked you to. That was nice. And those who I paid, I will cash you out later. And very nice to see new friends and new faces in the audience too. I don't have a particularly formal style. I'm just going to talk through some slides, and then I'm going to do a demonstration for you. And the exciting thing for me is that I've not done this demonstration before. Well, not exactly true. I've done some of this demonstration before, but not all of it. So this will be something new for me as well. So fingers crossed, and pray to the demo gods for me that it'll come together. I had my first glitch today. Apparently it doesn't want to recognize my Surface Pro, so I'm just going to do it all off the podium. So unfortunately I'll be up there for a little bit. We have 75 minutes, so I'd say that along the way, if you want to ask a question or anything like that, please do. I'd certainly welcome that. Otherwise, trust me, I will keep talking. So just feel free to stop me whenever you feel whenever you feel you need to. Quick plug if you need to follow me along on Twitter or anything else like that. I'm Floyd Innovation. It's pretty easy to work out, I think. So maybe some of you saw my gratuitous plug this morning to come to my session on Twitter, so thank you if you did. And sometimes I put a little content out there just about things I'm doing, working with customers, or any new things that we're doing kind of inside of Microsoft. So you've probably never seen an agenda slide like this one before. I tried to mix it up and just sort of put it in a chart for you to show how much time we would spend on each topic or thereabouts. I'll try to keep to this as best I possibly can. But be a little bit of slideware for you just to introduce the program and what it does, and some of the things that we've been doing at Microsoft with the program and some of the things we've done outside as well. Then I'm going to talk about how we had to reinvent the program completely because the underlying technology changed, and in the company there's good reasons why we'd want to go to a new platform, but also there's part of it that our thinking changed around the program, so I had to kind of reinvent the whole thing. Lots of time for demo because I think that's really the most fun part of coming to these sort of conferences is you get to see the products go, and that's a good time to ask questions about does it do this or that, or why did you make this choice, and I'd certainly welcome that. Q&A, as I said, just as you go, most welcome. If you're a little shy, you want to wait to the end, that's fine too. Thank you for joining. Please take a seat wherever you feel comfortable. And then right at the end, I'll just put my contact details out there for you, and if you're interested in kind of following up or not, then that'll be it for you as well. So if you don't mind, shall I kick off? We're good to go? Very good, excellent. So a little bit about the program. So Innovation Hub is not really a commercial name that we use. It was an internal name that we created to talk about a program. So it was pre-software. So we created this program that would be repeatable inside the company for people that just wanted to manage their ideas. And some of this kind of predates the acquisition of Yammer, and it sort of predates SharePoint 2013, where there are a lot more controls and things like that. It kind of goes a little bit further back, maybe actually 7 or almost 8 years now. But it really began as a program that we could use for people that said, I have a problem, and my problem is I get my ideas in email, or I don't even know how to collect my ideas, or I'm trying to make my own custom site or do some type of work like that. That's where it really began. And we looked at it and said, well, let's just think about the business process first before we answer it with technology, because there's so much technology we could answer it every which way. Turns out that the technology part is really just only automation of the process itself. So we had to design out the process. And one of the reasons why we felt it was so important to do that inside the company was that people really love to get involved in this stuff and create something on their own. And that's all well and good if you have time, but if you would prefer to be just coming up with innovative ideas and working on those, then why shouldn't I do all the hard work for you and just give you the program? So that was really the kind of genesis of it, and you'll kind of notice that in our statement that we make there that it was really about trying to identify the ideas that had the highest value and the ones that we could then convert to a proposal. So we weren't necessarily saying that any idea that came into this machine, whatever it might be, would turn around and yield some great big innovation. In fact, what we found is that most of the time it was small, kind of incremental improvements, but they were improvements that otherwise would not have happened. So it ended up being a very good thing. Now, I quite often say that because when people hear this topic or they think about it, they must say, oh, sure, yeah, Microsoft, did you put something in here and then out came Xbox or something like that? Well, of course not. It doesn't really work that way. That sort of thing is more kind of grassroots development that occurs. There was a big sort of strategic investment in an area, but then what happens in and around that program could very well be facilitated by something like this. And as I sort of go through the presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the program results that we've had from people that have adopted the framework. And then because of the automation tool, we get statistics back. And then we can go to management and say that the program is or is not working, which was another kind of goal that we wanted to accomplish through this program. So the actual Innovation Hub, if you like, the program is downloadable as a white paper. So you're expecting software, I know that, but instead it's just a PDF. And you can go get it, and there's just a little link down there. It's pretty easy to get to, just a short URL. And this is something that we put together, obviously, inside the company, but it's also something that we worked on with our key partners that facilitate this type of program, and then also some key customers, some of which chose not to be named, but still wanted to make a contribution, and others that put their hand up and said, yeah, we would like to be named. And kind of go check the credits, actually, is where you can kind of see who was involved that didn't really want to have a face behind this, but they were certainly a large contributor. It's also part of a community that we created. So when we did this, we said, let's just build a community behind it, and then if you want to come and join us, if you want to join Microsoft on this journey of trying to work out how to make this work, then we would love to do that with you. So quite often what I do is just have an informal monthly call. We just do a little round robin amongst ourselves, and we'll talk about what works and what doesn't work. In honesty, most of the time it's about what doesn't work, because if it's working, why talk about it? But we try to capture both if we can. The other thing we did too, which is kind of new, is we wanted to create something that you could replicate if you wanted the automation piece. So we've always been very focused on partner delivery, and that still remains true. And then you'll see in the framework that there is a lot of partners in there, sort of a range of them, that all offer different automation solutions, but they have the same framework. So then you've got a really good choice. And we do the same sort of thing as well. So if you happen to just want to get it straight from us, you can get it straight from us. But then you really need to have a partner behind it to kind of make it your own and do as you need. So that's, that really kind of encompasses the entire program. Now, I'm going to give you the white paper in 2 slides so that you don't have to read all 30 pages of it. You can just get sort of the short version, and here it is. So essentially what we created was this 5-step program, if you want to call it that, that allows any person in the company to spin up their own innovation program and then articulate it back to their people and to their management. And because of that, we had to create something that was going to be snappy and that they would know how to repeat themselves. So we use a little bit of onomatopoeia. It just works nice. You can kind of just go, it's all one letter. So envision, engage, evolve, evaluate, and execute. We call it the 5 E's of innovation in the enterprise. We've been talking about this for a long time. We started with 7, then we had 4, and then we kind of went in between, and we ended up with 5 of these. And the reason why we have the top-level framework is that we want to provide something that then people can drill down to. So rather than creating a baseline, like a traditional project with a lot of tasks and stage gates and things of this nature, we decided we'd take a step back and say, here is a top-level program. And what happens beneath that is really going to be up to you. So you can kind of see and envision, a recommendation would be program strategy and brainstorming. And you'd kind of ask yourself, why would you even have that? Because isn't the whole idea of an automation tool that that's where the brainstorming occurs? Well, it was a learning that we had, that actually when you're setting up your program, before you touch any software or go out to your community, you really need to do some brainstorming around what you want to accomplish, but then also try and create some pioneering ideas that can go into the community so people have directionally got somewhere to go. So this is kind of very different to some of the misconceptions we find in the marketplace, which is that you open a community, it's so easy, you just turn on something, maybe it's Yammer you turn on today, and then suddenly a million ideas come out of it. It's a lot more complicated than that and a lot more difficult than that. In fact, this type of program executes almost identical to any type of social program that you would run in the company. They're very, very close in nature. So if you've launched a social program before and then you found that a few people went to it and then it kind of went flat, the same thing happens to this. They are joined 100% at the hip. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of changed the topic around a little bit to be more about social computing in the enterprise, because they are so tightly intertwined. I think the rest of it is fairly self-explanatory. It's a funnel, so the idea is you get a lot of concepts and ideas in, and then you boil it down until you've got yourself a proposal that you can evaluate in the company, and then the part that's kind of maybe why you're here is then you can execute that, which is the delivery portion of it. And although the whole vision is rather broad, it does actually execute well. And we've seen this repeat a number of different times in Microsoft. We get a lot of stops. We get a lot that don't pass the evolve stage, that they just never get to the end. That happens. There's a lot of those. But the ones that get to the end, they just push them straight to project and they're off and running. Yes, sir?
How does this map to the strategic management group and organization? Where do they connect?
They don't. They don't. So I don't have any formal relationship with them, but a lot of the top level that you see is in alignment. It's the same, I would say, about StageGate or PhaseGate or any of these other kind of, sort of process-driven frameworks. They all kind of match up in some fashion. So here is something that I thought would be of interest to you, is that where do we use it and how? So you've got the framework, but then how do you apply the framework? And one of the mistakes we made was telling people that you just needed the framework and that was it. So just go execute your program. But then people would say, well, where do I execute the program exactly? And some of this is because we found that these very high top-down programs, so you run it for the entire company, was the worst thing you could possibly do. The best thing you could do was attach it to something that was already going to execute that needed improvement. And I keep talking about that these programs are much more about self-improvement or operational improvement than they are about creating or yielding something that's entirely brand new. Not that they cannot. It's just that I find statistically amongst our customers that work on this, that is actually rare. That the big eureka moment is actually quite rare. What is more common is that you attach it to something where it can yield a lot of value, and then it becomes a machine that people are very used to working with. And once it becomes, as part of the machinery, if you like, it's second nature. So then you kind of have that, you no longer have that adoption problem and trying to keep things up and running. So here's a very simple product design process. I come from this industry, so I decided I would use this one as kind of a baseline. That way I can at least answer questions somewhat in an educated fashion. And basically what we're saying is that for each of these that you see here with sort of validate requirements or gain consensus, that you can run that innovation hub process is what you can do for each of those. And so it's just, like I said, the application of a process to what would be today's social computing in the enterprise, but doing it in a way that it comes out with a structured result. And this was very different to what people were doing, where they were trying to spin up discussion groups, or they were creating groups in Yammer or doing anything else like that. It's unstructured and it works, but then they didn't have the accountability part that would come back. So then they lost all the measurement. So it was a little bit hard for them to kind of go through this and then say, well, then how did you come up with a selection? So if we were in, say, the validation phase of the product design process and you came up with something that was technically feasible, we'd say, okay, well, then how did you exactly come up with that? And then it was a little fuzzy. It was a little hard to know, oh, well, we went out here and we did this and did that and we got some consensus. Well, this makes it sort of very easy because there's a documentation process behind it that shows you. So, well, here it is exactly. But you could have almost any diagram, actually, and then just go put that 5 steps or 3 of those steps even in there and it would work just fine. Here's some program results for you. So I'm sorry for the kind of ugliness of this big chart, but I thought it was worth just talking about some that worked and some that didn't work. And what I did is I decided I'd take the names out because people have got a lot of pride of ownership in these, and they would say, hey, I'm not so cool about having my program name up there, and you're talking about what didn't work. I'm trying to fix things. Don't say that. So I just made it anonymous. But these are actual results that we got from our programs. In fact, 4 of these programs. I owned one of these programs, so I won't reveal whether it was the good one or the bad one. Some other groups are much more successful than I have been. And I'll just sort of walk you through how it works. So basically, we've got 4, a sample of 4, and then I've got sort of some basic measurements that we were using to go back to the company to say whether or not something had been successful. And so you can kind of see here that we started with, well, how many full-time employees are involved in each one of these hubs, how many people are in an organizing team, who gave it sanction to launch, which was important because a lot of teams would just want to boil something up on their own, which they're welcome to do and they can do on their own. And that's kind of a nice thing about Microsoft is you can do pretty much anything that you want to do if it's serving the better good. No one will stop you. But at some point, you're going to have to reveal it to management because you'll want to have it execute. So you might want to just get it going and then sort of reveal it to them. So The sanction, we sort of look at it and say, well, it was a group leadership team, or in this particular, well, one of those cases, it was actually a human resources department that said, give it the go-ahead. And then I took a measurement at each of these days. So 193 days in, I took a measurement, 35 days, 177, 377. So I was really thinking about a kind of time-based approach. Oh, that's a really good question, yeah. So out of the organising team, many of them did not have this as a full-time job. For many of them, this was a secondary job. I would say probably, actually on Hub 1, I know in particular that the organising team only had 2 people dedicated 100%. The other 4 were kind of shared resource, interested parties. And I would say that's probably true maybe across the board. Maybe in the Hub number 3, out of the 4 people, there was really 1. So I would say probably if you took kind of 10 or 20% of each of those, that would be true, so 1 or 2 people. And then we sort of go to the server itself and just have a look at the stats. So, we worked out that there was around about 2, average users per day on this one. There was about, 71 in a 30-day period. 260 people came back. 702 were unique. We ran 2 challenges or 2 communities, if you want to think about it that way. It yielded 94 ideas, got a lot of votes and comments. But the one that we really look at is how many of them were actually implemented. So we sort of broke through all of the clutter, because what happened is that, if you go do a lot of research on the internet and you sort of like look around at all the different options that are out there, people will always say to you, yeah, you need to get 5,000 people involved and you need to get 1,000 ideas, and then statistically that'll boil down and you will harvest 10. Well, I would draw your eyes actually to this middle one. So we dispelled that one. So we did have a big sample. We had 2,500 people involved in this one. After 35 days, it was really rocking, actually. It was doing great. So, it's 255 users in a 30-day period. It was doing really well. 5 challenges was a lot, in my opinion. They only generated 30 ideas, though. So ordinarily, we would have said, well, that was just a huge failure. And statistically, that didn't work at all. It's terrible. But what happened out of it is that they got 7 ideas implemented. So they came back and said this was just transformational. Not only did we get what we wanted out of it, but we got a higher number of things out of it than we thought we would. And that was about all they could execute. So it turned out to be a really good case study for us, because we would get rid of all of the angst. People would say, oh, I'm really worried, only 70 people submitted ideas. It's terrible. I'm not getting anything. So concentrate on the quality, not the quantity. And that's why we ended up getting very good results. And we have some that don't work. So Hub 3, it's not working. They just haven't been able to implement anything. Yes, sir?
So I would suggest that there's another step beyond that, beyond the ideas implemented, where how many of those were successful?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I would say on these, because a lot of them were kind of operational improvement, they went in and they just worked. I would say that. However, to be honest, I've not gone back and said, 6 months down the track, is it still viable? Is it still working? And that would be a good thing to do as another row, actually, is to come in and then say, did it have a life expectancy? Did it live on? Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's probably, that's a good measurement, but it wouldn't be the responsibility of this program, though. Because once you kind of get over to that, you should really be, it should launch into your PMO, and it should be kind of sitting over there is my basic opinion. But I would want to record that and say that this actually helped in some fashion. Yeah, that's something I didn't talk about, so I should go back. Was that your question too? Different. So I'll come to that one, I promise.
So I was wondering, how much of this is a measurement of the results of Innovation Hub?
Yes.
Versus actually a measurement of the innovation culture?
Oh, that is a very good question. Well, I would say no one had worked out a way to measure innovation culture. They hadn't. I mean, we do a survey. The company runs a big survey every year, and they ask people a question, and so they get a pulse. But I don't think anyone has really tried to measure or harness that specifically. So we really only have these types of programs. And mine's not the only one. There's a lot. I mean, the biggest one that you've probably heard of is Think Week. If you go and sort of search for that one, it goes a nice heritage all the way back to Bill Gates and such. And it runs still, and it's probably the most successful one. But it changed over time and went from being an innovation program to more like community knowledge development. So it kind of changed its charter. But I don't think we've ever done any sort of measurement like that to kind of compare and contrast the two. No, I don't think so. Yes? Yes, they are. Yeah. Yeah, I don't reveal any of the customers working with this. I don't have any. I would like to, but then they would be on stage presenting it, no doubt. I just kind of maybe jump in and talk about how we wanted to rework the program, and then I'll kind of address that concept of what is a challenge and sort of how does everything come together. First of all, we had to kind of rethink the design itself of how this would work. And the challenge or the tournament was a construct that we didn't invent ourselves. It was something that we actually did a collaboration with a gentleman called Dr. Carl Ulrich. It's the University of Pennsylvania. He's got lots of really great books that are out there that you can go find on Amazon, talk about the topic. And we liked it so much we decided that we would embrace it and harness it. He called it a tournament. We began calling it a challenge because we felt that was a little bit more engaging. You were challenging people to actually go do something. That it was a little bit like a bake-off of the best, that we would pick something in the end, and that's something that we wanted to do as well. So it was very action-oriented, that there would be an outcome. People weren't just doing this for like, oh, thank you for your good ideas, and then people sort of get deflated. They're like, so, yeah, great, I gave you great ideas, now what? Well, nothing, I just wanted great ideas. We wanted to make sure that didn't happen because that was a big trap. A lot of people did that in the company. So the other thing we sometimes call them is just a community of interest. So you can't host a challenge, or you can't host a tournament, or you can't have a community of interest unless you have a topic. So as a top-level construct, you have to make sure that you know what you want an idea for. And this was an important thing because we felt if people just create a ton of ideas by themselves, then they don't have any ownership nor any context. And that made it really hard to execute. So if you have a great idea, and you put it into the system, and then everybody agrees it's a great idea, and you do a bunch of work on it, but no one has any responsibility to make it execute or no ownership, then it's all for naught, and you get a huge amount of waste. So that was a very important thing, and why it's kind of block number one, is get that piece right and make sure that it can still execute. Next up, we wanted to really infuse it with social computing and really make it work. We wanted to bring in some things like reputation and badges and get notifications really going because our systems were too quiet. We found is that people would go there, and while they were in them, they were nice and noisy, and when they weren't, they were super quiet. So we wanted to use a couple of just tricks to make sure we could integrate it into their productivity workflow. The other thing we did too, which was kind of new, is we brought in some thinking out of my world, out of the product development world, to have a notion of life cycle. So we began, instead of just monitoring the idea through the phases, we just began monitoring the idea through its own development. That's something I'm going to demonstrate and show you. Of course, behind it, there has to be an evaluation process. We're very evaluation heavy in this system. We make sure that you can have the social part, which is great, but the moment it's going to hit the business, there's evaluation all over it. In fact, it has to be that way, we find. Otherwise, to be honest, you could just go host something in Yammer or anything really, and then you would just get the same result. So this part really makes it different. Roles and responsibilities, easy to understand. We keep our hub approach, which means that if you want one, you can have one. It's not any great big master thing running at the top of the company. That's why I have 4 of them. In fact, there's many more that run. There's probably about 8 or 9 that actually run, 4 that were really active and we monitor. There could even be more in the company I don't even know about, to be honest, because people can go get this self-service. It had to be very simple. We did not want to do any gimmicks. And not to kind of, rubbish a lot of the things that are out there, but it can get pretty cloudy in a hurry as people get deep into, what kind of game mechanics are behind it, and have you thought about, gamification's really hot, and what about the brain? Have you got a feedback loop in there and stuff? And sure, okay, yeah, well, it's fine, except that we found it was just really distracting, is that people were playing the game, or they were trying to get their scores up, or they're trying to do this or do that, and it's like, well, what happened to just like creating a good idea and then giving feedback if it's good or bad? And so we just wanted to keep it really simple. So we've got really the most rudimentary system you could possibly imagine because it's really focused on the content. Identity, everybody said, I hate it. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I designed this thing, everyone's like, I hate it. Like, I hate the Windows 8 look now, even though you asked for it, I hate it. I hate this other look, I hate it. So it's okay, you hate the look, you're responsible for your own look. And people said, oh, yay, thanks very much, because they wanted the pride of ownership in their hub. So like, yay, go crazy and just rebrand the whole thing if you want to. The important part, I thought, too, at the end of it was that we were advocating project and portfolio discipline. Very important. Is that we wanted to tell people, yeah, you need to execute this. Don't just get the ideas. Don't make that mistake. do a bunch of other work, sure, but then if you don't get to the last mile, then it's all for naught again. So it's like running a race and you don't complete. What was the point? Same thing, is to make sure you can go there. And that was a discipline that we had to break people of, which was going to Excel and doing their project in Excel. Now it's just in the system anyway, so maybe that'll make it easier for you to go work with. The other thing that's kind of new is we want to make it IT friendly. So we had to make this something that people could spin up on their own, and then they weren't kind of bothering my team about how to get it set up and provision servers and everything. So the new system is 100% cloud. It runs in Office 365. You can go provision one yourself inside of Microsoft. You can provision one yourself. And then you can go work out your own users and groups and such. Another little chart for you is how we worked out what pieces would go into the automation tool. And this was really kind of challenging because at Microsoft there's so many that you could pick from. We could have done it a million different sorts of ways. So we kind of started this way. We said, well, let's map out the process, and then let's just think about how deep you want to go into the process itself. So if you just want to kind of do this in a basic way and kind of get started, then you can just go after, engage, and evolve and do it all in Yammer. And it works great. And the thing is, you don't have to do anything. You just need to understand how to work Yammer. So get a network, create some groups, put a little bit of philosophy around it, and go. It's so easy. And the evolution part, go put your documents in Yammer and go evolve them, or go hook it up to your SharePoint site or something. Really very easy. And we had quite a few people that did this, actually. So they abandoned my program after I put in, it seemed like millions of dollars, but it wasn't. But it seemed that way to me. Put in all this time and effort. I had all these partners go build all this stuff, and then the minute we released Yammer, they abandoned the entire thing. They're like, I'm out of here, man. I'm going to go to Yammer. And so I first I said, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't do that. You'll fall on your face. But I couldn't keep saying that, because what happened if I fell on my face? So I just let them go. And sure enough, they came back and said, well, we kind of hit the wall. So we did pretty well through here, but then we couldn't go too much further with it, and we liked it for what it was. But now we've still got that problem of, well, we don't know how to evaluate the thing properly, nor do we have the measurement. So now what do we do? And I said, well, let's just harness it, right? So if this works for you, let's just bring it into the fold. So that's why Yammer turns up prominently down there as two great big blue circles. So if you wanted something a little bit more advanced, where you could have a little bit more orchestration and workflow, we said, well, we'll need to go and throw SharePoint against it. And so that's what we did. And so the Office 365 really began as SharePoint Online, the 2013 version, of course. And it brought a lot to the table, actually. There was a lot of things there that we really liked about it, and we felt that it would really work extremely well. And then we also noticed over time that as we began to integrate Yammer in, that you could kind of blend the two together, and then you had something that was even stronger. So then we said, okay, maybe your foundation is you begin with Yammer, and then once you kind of work out where you're going, then you stack process on top of it, and we'll give you Office 365. And then when you want to be super advanced, then you're going to need to have Project Online. And so the common thread here, everything was online, because everything inside of Microsoft, they just got rid of everything on-premise and just put it all online. So I kind of had to go that direction too. Although we still have a little bit that's on-premise, one of my programs still runs on-premise, we're going to eventually just migrate it all over to online. So, it's kind of a funny chart, because it doesn't really build perfectly, because if you want to do advanced, then your envisioning really needs to be Project Online, because you've got to set up all of your business drivers and you've got to put strategy together and such. So that's why it kind of turns up for the first time up there, but then it kind of continues all the way through. But Project Online is kind of horrible at doing engagement, but Office 365 and Yammer is really cool, so you can kind of put those two together and you can still kind of run it all as one. Rock on. So now it's time for the demo. And remarkably, I'm actually on time, which is kind of crazy. So I'm just going to run off this terminal here, and I'm just going to quickly switch the screen. All right. Very good. So here it is. Here's kind of the rethought or kind of reimagined Innovation Hub program as expressed through software. So I'm going to show you how the program works in the actual software itself. So you're going to think it's all about the software, but sort of remember that underneath there's still a program that executes. And there's a couple of goals that we had for this that I probably didn't explain. One of them is that we wanted to make something that was almost 100% out of the box. This was really important because we really struggled to have solutions that required a lot of development to make them work. Is that people, again, for reasons I said, wanted to get in and make it their own and do these great things with it, just didn't have the skills to go make it work the way they did, or they spent way too much time trying to debug and things like that. So we said, well, we're just going to make it work out of the box. And if that means we have to give up some features, we'll just give up those features, because really what we're here to do anyway is get the content. So it was that same thing about simplicity, is get rid of sort of any gadgety stuff if we could, and just kind of concentrate on the quality. So it has a few things in there which we had to do kind of gadgety things in a way, just to kind of make it engaging and such. But otherwise, it's effectively just SharePoint Online with a bunch of CSS. It's a little horrible to work with, but you get a nice result. And it's just got some very simple scripting that allows it to work with both Yammer and Project Online. So the way that we replicate this thing is actually a site backup. We don't even really have an installable anymore, is we just create one that's effectively blank, and then we just let people replicate it as a restore function. It doesn't work exactly, restore and go. It's like restore and then go in and start working it the way you need it to be in order to kind of execute. So it takes a couple of days, but people get up and running, and then they're kind of comfortable, which is good. The other thing, too, that put us in this direction was it's about the only way that you can work with SharePoint Online. You really can't add stuff to SharePoint Online. You can't sort of rely on something on-premise to go do some kind of function. You really have to make it almost 100% out of the box in order for it to execute. So what you see here is exactly out of the box. So kind of over here is the statistics stuff that we always put in the solution, is kind of how many challenges are operational and how many ideas are currently running. A nice banner that you can pop in yourself, and then you can kind of put your own text and things like that. We kind of made it easy. What I did is I took one that came from a customer, and I just went and hacked all of their name out of it. But so there's an automotive company that has been kind of running with this framework. The interesting thing about this too, I just want to make a quick point, was that this particular company was really not keen on doing the cloud at all. They're like, no cloud for me. I don't like my intellectual property out there. This is big intellectual property. After all, these are my ideas. It's going to be $1 billion of business. Yeah, that was going to be hard for us on premise. Yeah, about that one. So we said, well, why don't you take it anyway, just in the cloud, and just play with it for a little bit. And then 30 days later, they said, actually, for the type of information that we have, and just because it was so easy, the delivery part, we're just going to keep it in the cloud. So this is sort of interesting thing too, that if you're having that sort of hesitation of, well, I know I can't really go to the cloud because of the data and all that kind of stuff, whatever your angst might be, all valid, you can still use this, in my opinion, and see how it runs for you. And depending on your data classification, it's probably going to be fine. And in their circumstance, it certainly was. So I've got an admin role, so I've got a few admin functions that kind of run here, but these are all SharePoint admin functions, so nothing that you wouldn't have seen before. And just really simple visualization. We just record the top challenge, a simple calculation. We've just got a little list that runs here that tells you, what type of values are available. I'm only allowed to see published because there are none others that are here. So these are all in the published form. If I had closed one of these, you would see closed as an option, or if I'd gone and archived it, you would see that. But these are all active and good to go. And then below, there's just a list of all the top ideas. And we changed this a little bit because before we weren't really displaying anything on the sort of like home page. You would go there and you have to like drill yourself down into a challenge. But people would say to me, okay, yeah, that works great, except that I now just want to see what all the things are happening in this hub and then work out where directionally I want to go. So I made a slight change there to just have all these top ideas. And we can just identify what the challenge is just by looking at this idea, and it's in response to this challenge, and using kind of all web terminology that people would be used to. So I'm going to start just with one of these, which is the in-car digital platform. This is what a challenge looks like. So it's just more web pages, effectively. So it's just one page that's kind of dedicated to describing what the challenge is. And we put a few things in here too for people, so you can express yourself a little bit better than we could in the past, I guess, as you can kind of use rich text and you can put graphics in there and things. These were what the rudimentary things that people asked us for, was that how do you make this now kind of feature, robust for me in a way that I can express myself, rather than giving me, all of these great other things that you've done. Like the fundamentals are broken. I can't even describe my idea properly because I want to make it bold and I want to do this and want to do that. It meant that we had to give up some things like trying to control the look and feel and make it look cool, because people get in here and do crazy stuff, right? It looks like the 1990s web all of a sudden, where people got like blinking things and emoticons and stuff. If that's how you express yourself, it's how you express yourself. So go ahead and put it in there. Same thing, we've got, you know, the measurements, when things start and the time remaining. Go ahead and create your idea. If you want to set up a notification as an example, I'll just pop this quickly. It's just all SharePoint notifications. So now it's kind of a centralized system for doing that. If you're an admin and you need to sort of edit the challenge, then you can kind of get in here and change the description on the fly, start and end dates. If you've got kind of other people that need to own the challenge, take responsibility. If you need to change the graphics out for some reason, you want to change your tile, then you can kind of change out your tile color and that sort of thing. They're really basic, but what people love to do, where they say, I like to have a bit of personalization. We've had people use stoplights for this. Green, you're in. Yellow, it's getting close to being closed. Now it's red. Thing turned red. Challenge ended. So that's what they were using kind of the color mechanism for. Same thing, it's got a list here. It tells you a little bit about the relative score, who did it, when it was created. It's currently in review. It was an important thing to tell people at what stage it was in the life cycle. And a new one that we introduced here was this concept of history. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. So if we kind of open this one up. Here's a classic example of someone that's come in and said, okay, I'm responding to your challenge. I've written my idea, but now I'm going to give you a picture of something that looks like what I want to do. And so they just cut and paste this from the web. And because that's now just kind of like a HTML canvas, they can author almost anything they want in there. I mean, I've seen embedded videos, I've seen like tables, all sorts of crazy stuff that goes in there. And the nice thing is it can evolve over time. So talking about that evolution over time, we have this history. And the history, so we're kind of like at 32 different versions of this thing already. We record a huge amount of data just because SharePoint records the data for us. So we don't even control it anymore. We don't even have to. So we get everything. And it's a little bit ad nauseum because it kind of starts with, okay, you generated your idea. We put a workflow on it to do something. We changed a few things, got some notifications going, a few more change of status, etc. This was updated. Looks like there's a little bit of bold that went on. But the kind of intriguing thing about any of these is that you can go back and view them in the state that they were. So now we've introduced a whole new concept, which was this whole life cycle of the idea itself for the evolution of the idea. And we keep talking about that, is how do you evolve the idea? Well, now you've got the definitive record of how it occurred. And this was another thing that became very important, because behind this is now intellectual property of the company. So now we've got the definitive, if you like, history of what happened when we want to record the intellectual property itself, date and time stamped. Some of the best prior art that you can ever have. Works really well. It can work against you too, because if some step you went and saw something on the internet and you incorporated it in, at least we know when and how you did that, so then the IP is invalid. So we can kind of use it both ways. So that's the history. We've got these measurements that we've always had, and a little counter against this and things of that nature. Below, it just records the process flow. You just create that in a list. So it's really dumb. They're just names. Once you have the names, then you can apply workflow to them. So again, how do you get started quickly? Well, for a lot of people, they would define the process in the list. I want these things to happen. Turns up on the page for them, so that was quick. And then what happens then? They've got time. So we bought time for them. Now people can get in, start entering their ideas on day 2. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, when they work out how it needs to route, then they can start changing the status and working it. So another thing that we wanted to do is have the agility piece. Now below, we have a SharePoint discussion list that, again, using SharePoint out of the box, so we just use SharePoint discussion list. Now, a really good question that you may want to ask, and so let me do it for you, is where's Yammer? Well, I'm going to show you where Yammer is in a minute, because this, to a certain degree, is already kind of old and moldy. Which is hilarious because we really only finished developing this solution about 1 day ago. But already this is now out of date, so we had to move to something that was going to be more like the future direction of the actual product itself. So I'm going to show you how that works here in a second. While we're on the page, and the page kind of becomes king, you get all of these kind of inbuilt options for SharePoint has, so you can share out the page if you want to, you can follow your page, go put it in your feed. The other thing that you can do on the page if you are an admin is that you can perform part of the review process. And at this stage, all you really want to do is kind of kick off the first step. the rest of it ends up in this solution, the way we have it defined, being run by its workflow. So if you like, you really only need to do the first one to say, let's launch the process, and then beyond that, the workflow runs. But in this particular case, what I did is just allow you to pick any of these steps. So if you wanted to bypass one of them, you can just go to the next logical step. You might say, it doesn't need to have any proposal development. We just want to go straight to the eval. Is that person did such a nice job documenting it, why put them through any more pain? We'll just go to eval. So that's what that is. But ordinarily, you would just do step number one, and then the rest of it is all kind of orchestrated through the workflow. Same thing, we said you should be able to change ownership. We've got a little notification checkbox in there that says every time, as the author, when you're authoring this the first time, just put a checkbox on it, and then it'll just start firing email at you. Every time something happens, someone comes and does, a review, or they put in something, bang, it fires an email off to you. This is how to create the signal strength, was trying to make it something that people understood was active, is the right thing. So before, when it was kind of contained in a portal, people didn't know to go to the portal. They didn't even know anything had happened until they went there. So we'd hooked it up with the program they use the most, which is Outlook. So then they just get it straight in their email. And in the kind of pilot we ran on this, we didn't have that feature. And people complained bitterly. In fact, they said, we're not even going to continue until you put it in there. That's how mean they were to me. So I said, okay, fine. And so we put it in. And the nice thing about it was just all out of the box. So we just had to work out how to expose that little feature, and then we were good to go. So that's how the review is performed. And then if there's a project, you'll see View Project. But I'm not going to spoil that for you just yet. What I'll do now is just kind of come back over here for a second and run through a couple of basic more features. So this was obviously something we had to kind of keep with, which was, where are my ideas? So we just do a filter down of a list of just my ideas. And it also works for what are my review topics as well. So if you kind of have two roles here, one is that you're creating ideas, like you see there, but also I'm in the review group. Then I've got these tasks, which have got a workflow behind them that I have to go and do. And see again, notice how everything is just sort of like out of the box. So SharePoint does a good job of like reviews and tasks and things like that. So we just went ahead and used them. And you can kind of see it here. So you should be able to see everything that you're working on. You should be able to come in and sort of, if you want to manage any of these idea states, then you can always come in here and sort of edit off these as you need, or make any changes and such. So everything is fairly self-explanatory, which is another thing we wanted to incorporate, was this concept of no training. Is that the more training we had to involve people in, the less that they wanted to do something. It just drove them to Yammer, where they felt like they needed no training. And so that would be fine too. We'd leave them there for a bit, and then we'd have them come back. So we said, we'll just try to make it a little bit more consumable for them. Another couple little admin things is here as well, as we said, well, let's just have a look at doing reporting, but our reporting in SharePoint can be a little bit tricky. So we went for this. We said, let's just look at what the web server says. And actually it tells you quite a bit. So you can record this and say, show me most views, most recommendation clicks. You can kind of see these numbers kind of just altering on the fly there. And that comes real time off the web server, and you can kind of, filter it down a little bit if you want to a time period, or you could say, show me everything that was created by this guy. So you can drill in pretty quickly. And because, we've got all the content in the back end, if you want, you can just go export it all to Excel as well. So rather than put a lot of kind of user interface behind it, because we didn't really know all the things people wanted to do, and they kept evolving what they want to do, we just put the basics together and then said, you should know what to do with the rest of it, because it's kind of SharePoint. So that's kind of some of the admin features. One of the other admin features we talked about, of course, was the ability to change the state and then put it into a review, and then what happens when you're actually in the review. So now what I think I'll do is I'm just going to kick off an idea, and I'm just going to run it through a flow very quickly. And maybe I'll just even take it all the way through to a project and then show you how that works. So I spun up a little challenge for today, which was how to improve my demo. So I'm always interested in how to improve things. I kind of like that. And so here I've got a challenge for it, and we just sort of plugged in a couple of things here. The very popular one people always say to me is, hey man, like just do slides, because your demo is way too unreliable. So, okay, yeah, that's nice. And then there's one here that's like, just put pictures up and such. There's a couple of crazy ideas. But I'm going to kind of create one here on my own, kind of just show you some of the experience. And I'm going to say I want to use a tablet with Miracast. So I've heard a couple of people say that to me, and I should have just done this whole thing off a tablet. Probably should have. So, put your description in here rather than using a PC tethered to a desk. Use a tablet. So pretty simple kind of idea. If I really wanted to emphasize something, I just use all of these tools. So I can now make it red and bold and underlined. And like I said, you can do things here which are a little bit crazy. So it's going to look a little bit crazy, but maybe that's what you intended. And in a similar way, you can then do things like put in a table or a picture, put in a little bit of video. I could add a file to this if I wanted to as kind of another popular thing. And all of these functions that you would have in SharePoint are now available. So, if I had a file that I wanted to attach to this thing, and I could just go pick up the file and go attach it. And then it becomes part of the record. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. So I'll just go drop that in. And it's pretty quick. So it just pops it in. And then the idea is kind of there, and it's good to go. It doesn't have any ratings or anything yet because no one's come into the system. But that lightning speed was something else that we had to have, is that people didn't want to wait for it to kind of appear, and they didn't want a whole lot of process behind it in order to get there. We don't do any moderation. We don't intercept or anything like that. We just go in and we just go pretty quickly. You can also see we start off the history as well. So we kind of, it's down there. It's kind of version 1. I'll kind of open this guy up. And you can see it's pretty simple. I've just got my description there. It's a new idea. I've got my feed running against it. But, let's do something here. Let's just go put it into review. And so we're here already. I should probably just give it a quick rating. I'll give it 4 stars. I'm just going to hit the review process here. And I'm just going to say put it into review. And save this guy off. Oh, I knew this was going to happen today. We'll just try that again. Sometimes the second time around just works great. 1, 2, 3. Good to go. There we go. So now I've gone and skipped ahead. I was probably just a little faster than the background process there. So skipped ahead, and now we're kind of under review. Now, you're probably asking yourself, okay, so it's under review. How do I even know this now? Well, that's a little trick, is that we just have to wait a minute or two. Actually, that part worked really fast. Is to get notification that I actually need to go and do something. So it says here, well, let's have a look what this says. Oh, there's a change. So it knocked it over and said, okay, the first thing that happened was that it's now gone into review. So now what I'm doing is I'm waiting for the rest of the workflow to execute. That's going to tell me that I'm in the review team. So this is weird. I'm the author, but I'm also the review team. So then I'll get a new notification that says, hey, you need to go off and now perform the review. So that takes a little while. So while I'm waiting for that guy to come through, and we should hear the chime when it happens, I'm going to drop over here for a second and show you kind of future direction. This is another hub in the same tenancy. So I just provisioned a new one under the URL hub 3. So I have hub 2 and hub 3. I got hub 1 as well. And all I did was I changed out the graphics and changed it around a little bit. There goes our notification in the background. This one is a little bit different because, let's just find an idea down here. This one has Yammer integrated. So this one's a little bit more advanced. And what I like about this actually is that the Yammer is a lot richer than you've got in SharePoint. So SharePoint works, of course, it works out of the box, but this is really rich. And the other thing that makes it so wonderful is that not only can you, put documents in there and, all the rest of it, but you can view the conversation. So here is kind of my Yammer over here. And I can see it sitting out there. So in any idea in Innovation Hub, when you reply, it creates the record over in Yammer for you. So now it's exposed in your Yammer network. And you can tell it to go to a specific group if you want to or such. That's really up to you. But You can kind of see what's happened here is that, John has gone and shared this out with these people. I've got this feed against it, which is good. But this is really where we want to go with it. So, this mechanism is not working as well as we wanted. This mechanism works much better because it actually puts the idea front and center, so that when you record, it puts the idea on there, and then you can kind of go back to your innovation hub. So the trick is that we want to merge the two worlds. So if you're kicking a program off in Innovation Hub, that's one discrete community, but now you can share it with a much bigger, broader community, and you can have their involvement. And a little security trick for you there is that in Innovation Hub, you can secure that, so only certain people are allowed to go to the Innovation Hub itself. But you can say, in this Yammer group, even more people can come in, but they're only allowed to come in and just reply to what they see here. So you can be a little bit tricky with your security, and you can open it up in other ways and close it in others. Quick question.
When you have your innovation hub, does it then automatically create a Yammer group, or you're just using your own Yammer personal?
Yeah, it's a very good question. But by default, when you create an innovation hub, it has no connection to Yammer whatsoever. So you have to do all of your normal Yammer work that you would do, set up your network and your groups and establish everything that way. And then once you have it set up, then it's reflected in Innovation Hub. So then Yammer becomes the master. What you do in Yammer then is reflected in Innovation Hub, not around the other way. So if that makes sense? Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, that when you go to post a reply down here, I think it does tell you to post it specifically to a group, but I've already started one, so I can't cross-post. But when you first kick it off, yeah, it's got in there post in where, sort of all company in this particular group, etc. So any kind of Yammer feature is then exposed. All we use here is just Yammer embed. So it's all just, again, out of the box. There was nothing new, no code or anything like that to kind of make it work. So I heard our task appear in the background, so kind of a little sojourn over to where we're heading with it, as opposed to what I'm showing you. So the Yammer is in development. But we've got our task assigned for do the review. Now this we did completely crazy. So we've got our review, and here it is, and that's just going to take me to the task, but I've got an item that's now related to it. And the item is here. So it says that I've got to go to this guy here, which looks like a document, and it is. So what we've done is just a little bit of legwork in the background with a workflow to go automatically create a document for you, then that becomes the evaluation report. So we bring in some of the content that you see here, and we make it so that you understand what you're working on. And then we've just got some very simple things that you just fill out in Word or PowerPoint or Excel or any other document. Now, why would we go down this path? Well, we worked out that in these type of situations, people like to co-author. And it turns out that Word is really good at doing co-authoring, is that you can have multiple people working at the document at the same time. And you can see dynamically what people are doing. So rather than make this just about an individual that says something and then it's routed to the next person, etc., we still have some of that, but instead we've said let's make it a collaboration. And this was kind of the big new thing that we did, is we went away from making someone accountable for filling out certain forms and making it complicated. We said, no, here is the evaluation, and these people are needed in order to go make it work. Co-author this, and then we've got one record rather than 20 that we have to go merge, so then we've got one thing. And when you're finished, go back to your task list and just sign it off. And when it's signed off, then it can go fire another notification to say that the job is complete, or it can tell the workflow to complete. So this was something that's new, and so far in our preliminary testing, people seem to like this the most, is that they think this works quite well for them. Question?
Your challenge approach, your gating approach, which makes a lot of sense, isn't that counter to the idea of collaboration? Don't they interfere with one another?
No, they don't actually, because I'll just maybe go back a step. That's a good question too. So this is not a particularly good one. Let's go back to one of these that's got a little bit more content behind it. So in-car digital platform. Let's pick this guy off the top. Yeah, this is a better example, I think, to take a look at. So yeah, very good question. Aren't we sort of a little bit counter? Don't we have opposing forces between the challenge, which is about the individual, and then the collaboration aspect? Well, it's true, actually, is that it is a challenge and that you want your idea to be the best one that's in there, but also you want people to help you with it and you want them to feel invested in it. And this was something new, kind of a new culture that came into Microsoft quite recently. It was pretty public. A lot of people saw that we kind of dumped the performance evaluation system that was there, which was about kind of individuals, and made it now that people are more compensated or reviewed on doing collaborative work. So we adopted that exact same framework here, which is probably manifests itself the best in history. So some of these changes here occur because there was a comment that was made here that said, hey, have you thought about this? I'm telling you, I think your idea would be better if you did this or that. And then they can go and change their content, evolve it over time. So that was kind of the first place that we felt it needed to be collaborative, is that just because you didn't think of the idea doesn't mean that you can't come in and help make that idea great. And because we have that record, then all of those people can be rewarded for what they've done, which was an important thing. So yeah, while we still have kind of the tournament structure, the bake-off of these ideas, because we can't execute everything, at least we've got a part here where you're kind of in it together to make sure that what you're working on is going to be a very rich example of what it should be. I guess that would be the right way to think about it. Then over here, kind of in the review process, the kind of same thing here too was that before it was just about the individual, so the individual would come up with their own response. Now we're making it kind of a team, is that the team should get in here and really put in some responses. So a kind of interesting thing that we did was say, yeah, you can put your name and date and you can answer those responses, but someone could come along and then counteract that. And you would see it in Word, and you could go into the revision history and see that someone came along and they disagreed with you. So it's a collaborative thing onto itself, and then you have to have consensus before you can kind of go forward. So last step here, and I'm just going to go back to the one that we've been working with, just for the sake of showing this guy work all the way through, is my tablet with Miracast was my example that I just created before. So here it is. So I'm just going to circumvent the workflow, and I'm just going to push it to a project. And one of the reasons why I want to do that in this particular circumstance is we're in a demo circumstance, so I don't have the time to go through and just execute every single one to go make it perfect. So I've just done a little demo shortcut there that says just go ahead and make the project. Now, I'm going to just gloat a little bit. This was a huge technical feat because there was no documentation and we got no help. So we actually had one of our developers do a little bit of hacking behind the scenes to kind of work out how it should work. And it works beautifully. And so the trick is that we actually go 100% from SharePoint over to project just with script, 100%. So the recommended path was to be entirely inside of project. But inside of project, you can't run things like a community template and a few things like that. So we keep all of that in SharePoint. And then if you want to go to project, you kind of add it to your tenancy. And then through this script action, then you can go and migrate your ideas over into the project instance, which makes it really clean. And as you see, it's really fast too, which is really great. So once you're in here, if I just, wrong button there. If I just go to a list of all the projects that are available, so here they are, here's my tablet one that came in, then anything that's in project is now available to you. So I've set something up here again just kind of for demo purposes, but I've got my little portfolio analysis that's running here against some of the earlier projects that I put in place. And what I like about this end of the story is kind of how I conclude things for people when I show them internally or if I'm talking to a customer, is that now you're in a very analytical engine and now you've got something very practical that you can execute. So we went through a step of do all of your community development and get all of your ideas together in a social context, put them into a collaborative evaluation framework, and then have people be accountable for what they're doing, and then conclude by putting it over into project where you can really start to build out the metrics engine behind it and start to do selections. So you've seen this demo a million times before. You don't need me to do it, but just to kind of show how it works, of course, we just remove our incubation budget down to what we actually have is around about 250,000, and then it's going to make some selections for us. So exactly the same way, I guess, that we've always shown this and made it work, but now we've just moved it 100% over to the cloud. In terms of the... oh, yes, quick question.
I have a question. You
Actually, it creates a new one inside a PWA. So it's now a project site for the project as opposed to the Innovation Hub, which is kind of the social part. And it was an option, so we thought we'd just do it anyway. But if you don't like it, you can turn it off, I guess. That kind of rounds it out, actually. There's not a great deal more to kind of explain about how the system works. So, we're just using the notification system of SharePoint itself. And in some cases, actually, you'll see kind of Yammer come through as well. So we just keep the kind of email as a central location for orchestrating how this works. We make sure that we kind of move everything sort of out of this community context that you see here. We can kind of keep everything encapsulated to the right point in time, and then when things are ready to go, then we push it over into project, and then it can continue to execute. And as a future direction, this is what we're really looking at, is to have it reflected 100% in Yammer. And this is the experience that we're looking for here too, is that when you apply, it's just going to create this, a link for you so that when you select it through, it takes you back to where you were. So at the moment, it's taking me back to my original site here that's now got the feed in from SharePoint. But obviously, where that needs to go then is back to the originating one that has Yammer. So with that, I've just got a couple more things here to kind of round out for you. One thing I want to do here is just answer any more questions that you have. But just as a last sort of closing comment that I'll make is that if you like what you see and you'd like to kind of give this a try, then just go talk to whoever you're partnering with at the moment. So I see Quantum PM is here as an example. If you're working with them, just go talk to them about this, and then they can make it happen for you. Or if you want, you can just go talk to your Microsoft rep and say, hey, I'm interested in working on Office 365 with this, and then they can kind of work that out for you as well. That might be in a circumstance where you don't have a partner. And I definitely advocate that you go have a look at the white paper, because it explains what I've just done in many more words and provides a little bit more of our thinking around the Innovation Hub program itself. I'm always available on email. I try very hard to answer within a couple of days. I know that's pretty horrid performance, a couple of days, but I'm very fortunate that I get to fly all over the world. So often I'm on a plane. I may not be able to get back to you immediately. And if you care to, then I'm on Twitter as well. Probably find me on LinkedIn. So with that, we've still got 12 minutes, so I can let you go and have a coffee or something, or we could have some more questions. So up to you. Well, I'm going to say silence is golden. And yes, sir. I love it. I love it. It's great. This has not made it out of its beta phase yet, because today is the unveiling of the completed manifestation. Yes. So I had around about 55 beta users in there, really hitting on it hard. And my favorite one was the person that tried to add the BI center to it to go create some elaborate reporting, and then completely crashed the tenancy, which was really awesome. And so, yeah, we're trying to work out what happened there. But otherwise, yeah, when I get back to Redmond early next week, then we'll be making this available for people to go provision. Yes?
So, Simon, I'm looking at I downloaded your white paper.
Yes.
Wonderful. Doug Wellsby from Microsoft, by the way.
Hi there.
So your 5 E's here,
Yeah.
Evaluate phase, the team evaluation, and the approval process.
Yep.
That's being looked after through the Innovation Hub itself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Has there been any thought, I mean, you showed us portfolio analyzer there, the whole strategy area there. Where's the possibilities there of using that for the team evaluation or approval?
For using project.
Is the approval process, by the time we projectize it
Yep.
in Project Server, is that more of a higher level approval process within the, say, within the C-level business executives that are examining everything that's coming through the funnel?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. I don't see any reason in its design, why you could not use project earlier if you wanted to. And it's really robust. I mean, building out the detail pages and things like that is really very simple. And the good thing is it's recording all the data in the back, so you've got a reporting engine behind it as well. One of the reasons why we chose not to show that immediately is that we found for many customers it seemed a little heavy-handed, so that you needed project in order just to go collect ideas. So we took back a step and said, well, SharePoint's a little bit easier to consume just to get started. So here's something that's inside of SharePoint. But if you have a project already or you're heading in that direction, then yeah, absolutely, you could just go use it. There's no reason why not.
And don't get me wrong, I think the way it's split right now is wonderful. You get this giant funnel of ideas that when it finally makes it to project server, it's received a certain level of approval.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
push it over to project server and let the business start to look hard at it rather than all of the individual contributors and examining it.
Exactly. And I think that was, as I'd say, by design. So we chose that from the beginning. However, your question is one I've heard quite a lot, and I think it's a really good one too, that if you just love running everything inside of PWA, then just go run as much as you can inside of PWA.
So I have a DCR, a design change request. I like your idea of using Word for the concurrent editing capabilities in there. The data that we're gathering in the Innovation Hub, being able to push some of that over to Project Server. I saw you had a project details page show up there.
Yep.
We did look at it.
Yeah.
Getting some of that information into Project Server to help us through that whole strategic evaluation process.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
going to be invaluable. Estimated costs, estimated returns, some of the scoring that
Sure.
we did already. So as you're scripting that instance creation of a project and projectizing it. So
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a great variation of this, which is something else I like about it, is that you can kind of morph it into your own. So you're not stuck with my invention. It's good. So that was great feedback. Any more questions? Yes. 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 Yeah. Oh, yeah. You turn on the yeah. So it works it out on its own, actually. So first time somebody else comes into the document, it just identifies. It's like the revisions. If just the same function as that. Yes. Yeah, and so they can reject it. So if you put in what you thought, and I came in and edited, you can just reject it and say, I don't care what Simon says. I'm going to keep this. You have authoring control in that regard. I think I'm going to call it if that's fine. So yeah, thank you very much.